Thanks everyone for attending. Appreciate you all coming out at such an early slot. So today's presentation is about sharing with you guys what we've been doing over the past 10 years with regards to data warehousing, campaign management, and more recently using Aprimo. So we're going to cover those subjects off. I'll cover off the TRM elements, and then Bev's going to talk through Aprimo. The takeaways and the things that we're really looking to discuss with you. We want to share with you that journey we've been on. We want to share with you the benefits we see with regards to TRM and Aprimo, really bring those to life for you. And then also just give you a view of what we are planning to do with regards to the future use of these tools and how we look to exploit them in the bank. Okay, so before we get into the detail, just to familiarise yourself with who we are. We're Barclays Bank, one of the big financial organisations in the world. In the UK, we're seen as part of the Big Four bank group. We work in the UK retail bank sector, so that's looking after tens of millions of personal and business customers and tens of millions of accounts ranging from current accounts, savings, loans, investments, mortgages. So that's the focus of what we do, and that's what we'll be covering today. Just across the group though, we've got a variety of other departments you may be aware of. We've got a wealth division, corporate, Barcap, we've got a credit card division, and we have also got presence in South Africa in the form of ABSA. And each area will be having their own marketing functions, other functions we've got within the bank. The final point for awareness is hopefully our sponsorship is working reasonably well. Barclays is the main sponsor of the English Premier League, so hopefully you'll have heard of us. We also do a range of sponsorship across the globe, from tennis events to golf events, and in the UK we also do some more local sponsorship with regards to things like the free bike scheme in London. Okay, so that's who we are. So, data warehousing in Barclays, and specifically in marketing. Just a brief history on this. This is just a simple overview from a business perspective of what our data warehouse is for us. So on the left-hand side, we've got lots of source systems, customer, product data. We've got information coming in from third parties, and we've got a load of channel data. So all of our channels are online channels, our telephony channels, our ATM network, all collect a whole host of data. And we bring that into our data warehouse and we consolidate it into a customer data set. We've been instrumental in leading the development of this data set. It really is the underpinning force for what we do in marketing. Without it, it would be very difficult for us to achieve what we achieve today. So within this data set, we've got the collated customer and product information, but we've also got things like summary data. So every month we analyse automatically our customer data, our account data, and present the data to our users so that they don't have to calculate counts of transactions. They can just go to simple summary tables. And the range of data in the database, it carries from the customer and accounts right down to individual transactions going back 13 months. So the granularity is really great, and as I say, it really underpins what we do. The final point I want to call out is that we've worked hard with our technology colleagues within Barclays, and we've got a really great model whereby the technology teams, we look to them to load and manage the data, and we look to our analysts to actually just focus on the analysing of the data. Really, we've seen examples whereby we've got people who are meant to be analysing data, finding insight, finding value for the business, but they seem to spend a large chunk of their time uploading data, preparing data. We just don't see the value of that. So we've worked really hard with the technology teams to ensure clear roles and responsibilities, and they provide a great job in giving us the data on a daily basis for us to do what we want. The final point around this is, obviously it's great for us in marketing. We use this data set day in, day out for a number of activities, but it is used as well by all parts of the bank. So it's a shared asset, and it really maximises and shows the strength of putting all your data into the data warehouse. So, campaign management in Barclays. Back in 2001, the CRM model within Barclays was pretty simplistic. We had a third-party supported CRM tool. It was a monthly data refresh. It supported, by and large, direct mail only. There was some lead generation, but it just wasn't an effective solution in driving value for the business. At the same time, the data warehouse was growing. We were looking at getting more value. And so we put together this vision for campaign management, and we pulled out the key points around what we should be doing with regards to campaigning. The vision statement was to deliver timely, targeted communications to our customer. So right messages, right customers, right time, basics of marketing. We put in place these building blocks, and they're still relevant today. We wanted daily campaign activity, we want closed loop marketing, we want analytics to be tightly integrated with our marketing activity, we wanted to look at multi-step campaigning, and we also wanted to automate our data flows and our channel distribution. So back in 2001, we looked at this and we put our requirements together. We looked at the marketplace about who was providing the solutions at the time, completed the necessary assessments, and we decided as a group to install the Epiphany product as our strategic CRM toolkit. Interesting link to the conference objective around conquering complexity. I'm not going to go through this, the good news for you all. I'm not going to walk you step by step through this. But what this slide is demonstrating really is the confused state of a CRM tool that was separate from the data warehouse. Had huge amounts of data moving around, huge amounts of moving parts, and obviously that means lots of points of failure. So we delivered the project, and Epiphany was off the ground and running, and it was working to an extent. But we found over time there were just a number of challenges of having a remote CRM toolkit. So the complex architecture we just shown up was one of the key points. There were many steps to get the data to the users. So we had the Teradata environment being updated every day. We then had to take that data or a subset of that data off the Teradata environment and push it into a separate platform. It added an extra day to the data processing, and there was just more points of failure. And the transformation of the information was also very complex from a delivery perspective. That caused some challenges as well. So very difficult to manage. The other point is that to distribute out our leads, in some cases we then had to send the leads back from Epiphany into the data warehouse, and the data warehouse distributed them. So we had just these very many moving parts. The complex architecture and those challenges associated with it also led to some data quality issues. So within the warehouse, you would run a simple statement, count statement, give me the number of customers, number of products, you'd get an answer. You were quite happy with that. If you ran the same query in Epiphany, because of the way that Epiphany was configured, because the data was a day behind, you couldn't get the same answer. There was often challenges within the business about whether the information in Epiphany was correct, who had the master view and the single view of what we were signing off, and that caused delays in our process, challenge over whether what we were doing was accurate. Another element that was a problem was the fact that it was a limited data set. So we had to define as part of the project, you have to define all your data feeds out from the Teradata box and other source systems and agree the schema for Epiphany. 3 months in, 6 months in, the users and the business decide that their objectives are changing, their requirements are changing, they need new data into the system. The reality is that it costs an awful lot of money to put that data in, and to amend data feeds would add further costs and further delays. So the net result was that the CRM teams were doing more and more pre-processing in the data warehouse. So they were deriving their lists in the Teradata environment using SQL, and then just passing across predefined lists, flags to give to Epiphany. And Epiphany was turning into just a scheduling tool, a simple campaign selection. It wasn't hitting the points around segmentation, anything in that regard. Next point around capacity was another challenge. Again, businesses maybe aren't the greatest at forecasting demand and future requirements and future vision. And over time, we found that the capacity challenges were growing as people wanted to try more and more things. The capacity of the standalone box of Epiphany couldn't keep up with business demand, which meant that some of the objectives that we were trying to do, such as daily refresh of leads within certain channels, we couldn't do that every time. And so we get to the point whereby overall high cost associated with the enhancements and upgrades, to add capacity to the box, to the standalone box, would cost a lot of money. To add data to the box would again cost a significant amount. And also to upgrade within their environment, that was another significant cost challenge. At the end of 2004, we completed another assessment. The landscape had changed. We'd got a lot better understanding of what CRM could do for us and what we wanted to do with CRM. We carried out a 3-month assessment, looking at the marketplace, but really honing in and prioritizing what we wanted to get from a CRM tool. And one of the driving factors in this was making sure that it could integrate tightly with Teradata. We wanted to simplify. We wanted to really look at reducing the layers of complexity we had in getting our data out to our customers and to our users. Okay, so slide here, simplified architecture. Similar on the left-hand side and the Teradata platform, we've already been through this. Data comes in, we're consolidating it up. This is where TRM now takes over, so TRM can just read directly from that data set. There's no movement of data, we're not storing it in a different environment. The data's on the data warehouse, TRM can talk to it. And that just simplified our whole approach with regards to the data management side of CRM. Really big win for us. And also gave us the point around single view of the data, so the CRM guys can look at the same information as the analytics team, the finance team, and they're all getting the same answer. The far-hand side, that's when we got our channel points. So we invested a lot of money in connecting our data warehouse to our channel so that, again, the analysts could focus on campaign management, campaign execution, and push the data out to channels. That was a key part of what we were looking to achieve. So we've got human contact in the branches, in telephony centers. We've got online channels, we've got direct mail, statements, email, and getting into SMS. Okay. So just really going through the benefits, just pulling them out of TRM versus a remote CRM tool. And we used Epiphany, but I think we believe this is a challenge of any remote CRM tool that's away from the warehouse. So if you've got a Teradata box, these are the benefits we see of using TRM. First up, shared infrastructure. So beforehand, we had to pay for the whole of that box for Epiphany. It was very expensive. We're now part of the wider Teradata estate. Our requirements are within that estate, and the technology teams are therefore managing capacity. And we've got that input at peak times for us. Hopefully they're not peak times for other areas, so we can share the capacity out, manage the workload, and overall it brings down our operating costs. The other thing it does, being part of the Teradata estate, we found that from a licensing perspective, it was much cheaper, and our cost-benefit analysis of moving from Epiphany to TRM at the time was in the region of £5 million over 5 years, so it was a really significant saving to integrate it back into the warehouse. As I mentioned before, the next point was around the shared infrastructure and a single version of the truth. So we were seeing that we were now getting the teams being able to work really closely together, and all the data was available to them so they could all work with each other and provide answer sets, share some of the analytics directly into the campaign activity. Really, really valuable ways of working within the teams across marketing and insight. Next point is around enhancement model. The great news is with TRM, as I mentioned, if the data's in the data warehouse, it's there. TRM can read it straight away. We see a number of projects in Barclays putting data into our data warehouse, consolidating it into our data sets, and then straight away, day one, day two, the analysts can begin to start to look at the data, integrate it into their campaigns, and we haven't got that hassle and the challenge and the cost of taking it from the data warehouse into a separate platform. Massive win for us. Similarly, the data breadth. If it's on the warehouse, we can read it. If it wasn't in Epiphany, it was a big problem. Really, really big positive for us and gave us that flexibility. The final point is around, I guess it's around a governance point, which is, as a standalone platform, marketing were kind of on their own. They were supported by technology, but we were we had to do a lot more, I think, to take the application forward and manage the application. We're now part of the data management roadmap within Barclays, so we've got a really key voice at the table, helping influence the direction of the data warehouse and making sure our requirements are understood. Okay, so I just want to pull out some lessons learned from CRM projects. I've got some general points and some points specifically about TRM. So in general then, some of the key points, if you are just installing CRM tools, be realistic. The technology alone isn't going to solve all your problems, so make sure you put enough time into planning, look at your requirements across the business, don't look at maybe over mapping. So we have within our consolidated data set something like 1,500, 2,000 variables. If you tried to map all those in, you would spend 2 years mapping the application. So really try and analyze and get down to the requirements for the users. What do they need to use the application for? What do they need to drive out? So you make it a really useful tool. Next point is around team structures. So we considered a few things and we put in place a few changes. So things like setting aside a couple of people maybe in your team who are just solely responsible for the campaign execution side. So they manage the schedules, they make sure that there's no conflicts of interest going through and manage the relationship with the service side of the business in technology to keep the service smoothly running. A few of the points you could consider as well is potentially looking at bringing in elements of application support into your business. So simple mapping requests to give yourself some agility so you're not reliant solely on technology. Automation of data flows is for us a complete no-brainer. We just really would recommend it to everyone to get the data movements out of the business, get them focusing on the analytics, and get technology guys to provide that robust transmission of data. Establishing business champions is really key. It's throughout the duration of the project, getting people involved who are going to be involved in the use of the tool, getting them involved, getting them bought in, and then getting them championing the solution once it's live. It's a really good thing to do. Sometimes lots of users don't actually like change, so they're there to help support the project team throughout. Another final point generally is about adopting old practices. I think every CRM has certain ways of working, and sometimes within the teams they get into a routine and there's challenge around whether we should change processes. I think the recommended point that maybe we could do more on is really challenge that thinking and look at solutions with a fresh set of eyes, and rather than trying to force old ways of working into the application. From a TRM perspective, learning from others, these sessions are great, but take advantage of any site visits you can do. Really useful, sit down with other areas, other teams who are using it. That was a hugely valuable thing for us to do. We ran a proof of concept, so we spent not much money, put in place a small pilot of TRM, just to give the users a taste of what it would look like, get their feelings, get their view of whether it would be an effective tool. And that really helps, again, in that buy-in around getting the champions involved. They feel they're part of the decision-making process. Get Teradata involved is another piece of advice. I think certainly with regards to upgrades, we went down a route whereby we felt it was just a simple upgrade and we were going down a route. And I think we really could have looked to get Teradata involved earlier, get them to challenge our thinking about whether it was just a simple upgrade or whether there's any other opportunities to exploit the versions that were coming on board. Kind of moving into that final point then, if you're using TRM already, version 5 maybe, and you're looking at version 6.3, I think now, or 6.4, then really have a look at considering starting from scratch. By that I mean, consider the interface itself. The interface changes quite considerably, so take an opportunity to consider things like remapping the application, reconfiguring it so it fits better with the structures of the new visual look of the application, rather than, again, kind of carrying on as you were before. Okay, so I just want to finally then share with you some of the impacts of what we've seen of TRM on Barclays. So we implemented in 2006, and since then we've seen a lot of change. Within our channel and campaign space, we've seen the throughput grow considerably. So I just want to draw that out. So we're managing now hundreds of different leads that go out to our relationship managers, go out to our branch channels, go out to our telephony agents. We're refreshing those on a daily basis, and we're talking tens of millions of customers being refreshed, lots and lots of segments being updated. So we've got a nice connection to our channels. We're really making sure that we've got the freshest data that we can given to them so that when customers make contact, the information that's presented to them is relevant. The next point is around integration with online banking. So we're also integrated into that space. We are supplying, again, a number of leads on a regular basis into that environment, and they're being displayed within the secure site. Again, it really helps the overall customer experience cross-channel as well, where they're seeing, hopefully, we're delivering consistent messaging across these channels. We've got a whole host of email activity. So we've got daily activity, so based on trigger events, some weekly and monthly campaigns, looking at personalization, really taking advantage of the breadth of data within Teradata, within TRM, pushing that into the content, so the content that they receive is rich and relevant to each specific customer. We've also got a nice integration with our statement channel. So as a bank, we have to send out 10 million statements every month to our customers to advise them of their transactions, their balances. We've worked with that channel to identify opportunities within the statement to put marketing content in white space. And now we're managing a whole host of marketing activity to populate various sections of the statement or insert specific leaflets and pamphlets. And we're seeing really good returns from a low-cost channel because we're avoiding the print cost because we have to send out the statement. We do have direct mail campaigns. And one of the big things that we have to do in our team is support the operational communications. So that's making sure that rate changes, advice to customers, banking code, financial service regulation communications delivered on time to all of our customers. Really important part of our business, and TRM is at the heart of that. We do outbound telephony, so we've got daily and weekly campaigns going out, contacting in the region of 100,000 customers every couple of weeks with offers and seeing value in that space. And then finally, we're just starting to get into the SMS world and mobile world. So over the past few years, we've been developing our thinking with regards to this, and we're looking more at delivering a message that's linked into smartphones. So we're creating phone-optimized landing pages so that we can send out an SMS and get some call to action right through to the digital space. Another point to call out is just around how we approach campaign selection. So now that everything's in the warehouse, everything's now in TRM, we've adopted 3 key approaches for campaign selection, and everything therefore is managed within TRM. First one is around logical selections. So this is the pretty straightforward stuff. We're looking for campaigns with really simple business rules that people can understand. So people with high balances on their current account where they've got no savings with us, that would be an obvious logical selection. Customers who have a product that's expiring in maybe 60 days' time, a bond, we'd look to recycle that, or a loan, things like that. So those selections are really key. They're very, very useful for the front-end teams because they can really understand the data and the insight behind why they're being told to talk to a customer about a specific offer. The next set of methodologies around event detection. So we've spent a lot of time over the past 10 years really honing in on our event detection processes. We've got a pretty slick, we think it's pretty slick anyway, approach. So day 0, customers are transacting in the channels, in the systems. Between day 1 and 2, that data's come into the warehouse. We've recognized the event, TRM's recognized it, we've ran it through campaigns, and we've pushed it out to channel. And then day 3 to 5, we're then looking to deliver that. So that could be in the form of a piece of direct mail, an email, and then the quicker channels, things like SMS, phone calls. We can really start to get to the customer within a short space of time. We're obviously constrained at the moment by batch, but at some point in the future, I'm sure real time might come in. We might be able to cut that elapsed time down further. So seeing a lot of good returns from the event detection activity. Then finally, there's predictive analytics. So we use KXDN as a software tool for our predictive analytics. We like it because it's not too complex from a user perspective. You don't have to have a particularly strong stats background to get some models out of the way. And this is just a timeline of an example of how quickly it can be used to deploy models. So day 0, the data set's created to build the model. And then it takes, we think, up to a week to really hone that model, develop it, go through the iterations, get it into a state where we're happy, and then what we can do is just extract the SQL from the system and then get it into the warehouse and get it into our campaign tool. We don't often do too much which is directly related to models. We do some activity, but what we can do as well with the models is obviously overlay it with the logical selections and the event detection points. Okay, finally, in the TRM world, it's really important that we've got the closed loop and we're learning all the time. So we've covered the campaign execution and campaign dispatch points. 3 and 4, though, are around some of the elements of TRM that really help us inform our next step in the business. So TRM, by default, has a contact history. So all of that activity I talked about, going out the door, we're logging all of that. And where possible, we're also getting responses from channels. At point 4 then, we've got a campaign MI team who are looking at what's happened, and then they're comparing that with the data set, looking at the customers that were contacted, looking at the control cells, looking to see who's taking out the products, and determining which campaigns are working effectively and which ones we need to work harder on or potentially change or remove. So that's the final point around TRM. It's a really valuable point to ensure that we're constantly learning. We're not just doing the same old activity, and we're looking to add value at every point in our process. Okay? So I'm going to hand to Bev now, and she's going to give you an overview of MRM.
Hi, thanks. What I want to do is really share with you some of the challenges that marketing faced and why we needed to implement an MRM solution and what we achieved by implementing Aprimo. Marketing had a number of challenges. One of the big changes in marketing over the last 3 years is that marketing started to own the retail marketing budget. And with that comes a lot of responsibility because ultimately then we're driving the commercial agenda and we have some clear goals associated. The issues we had was, though, that marketing as a team couldn't actually pull together a marketing annual plan and maintain it. From a financials perspective, the way that our budgets were held, they were held at the local channel managers level, and therefore they had total control of that budget in terms of how it was used. In terms of collateral, basically all the collateral that we created, so that's basically our creative, our scripts, they were actually being managed at our agencies or they were just being held on individual employee drives, and therefore there was no opportunity to reuse those assets, therefore driving cost up through the individual activities that we took forward. And then from a governance perspective, we as marketeers know we have to adhere to some stringent legal and compliance controls. And the challenge we had was that those sign-offs were hidden in drives or in email accounts, and therefore when we had to evidence that we'd actually followed a process, it was very difficult to do and it was very timely. So in terms of why we felt we needed to invest in MRM, we really needed a clear governance model. We had individuals within individuals' teams doing very different things, and we needed to get a consistent methodology. And basically, investing in MRM helped us to be able to manage from a planning perspective to an implementation to an evaluation perspective all in one place, and therefore we believed it was the right thing to do for our organisation. The way we approached looking to the marketplace is that we did a full assessment of all the different suppliers within the marketplace, and it became evident that basically Aprimo was one of the market leaders. Now, one of the things we liked about Aprimo is that basically it hit all our requirements. So from a planning and financial management perspective, it allowed us to create an annual plan but maintain it in real time, and associated with that plan was the actual budgetary commitments and also the actual spend, so therefore we could see what we were forecasting, but we could also see our actuals as well. From a process management perspective, We could implement consistent process across the individual teams, but also it gave us the ability to resource plan, which we'd never had before. So that starts us thinking about how we can actually leverage the resources we have across the teams and start creating pools of skills instead of having very siloed channel teams. From a compliance and legal perspective, it gave us a massive capability in terms of a full audit end-to-end with all annotations on each piece of content. So therefore we could actually look and monitor who's making comments, and then the final sign-off process was a lot easier. And then from a brand and marketing content, it gave us the capability to actually deliver a digital assets library internal, which we'd never had before. And therefore it gave us it could help us deliver our vision of integrated campaigns. So in terms of what that meant for Barclays' operating model, Barclays' strategy is all around integrated campaigns. As organisations like ourselves, the competition is vast, and we're undertaking a lot more spend, particularly above the line. And what that meant for us is that when that above the line vision and strategy came to life as a piece of creative, we would be able, through Aprimo, to leverage that asset across all our channels. So therefore that consistent vision and that consistent campaign, basically from a customer experience perspective, was given the same message, which was really, really important for us. And that meant whether it was online, whether it was actual print, or whether it was even new digital channels such as self-service and mobile. So those annotations and those creative pieces could actually be leveraged across all channels. So what's the impact on Aprimo in Barclays? We committed to Aprimo in early 2009 and implemented in August. It was really important for us to implement in August because that starts our annual planning cycle. So from a planning perspective, before Aprimo, we had one annual plan, which literally took 4 weeks to consolidate. Basically, what we took was probably 10 to 12 Excel spreadsheets that had been created by the individual channel teams, and through an Excel macro, consolidated. Once that was consolidated, it basically was out of date because the channel teams had made amendments, and therefore we were in constant challenge around its accuracy and the viability of actually having the dialogue with our business partners in terms of locking down that plan. In terms of the process for change, we didn't have any governance. Changes were made at the local channel levels, but in terms of what that meant for the overarching plan, channel mix, from a finance perspective, those weren't even considered and therefore caused major issues in terms of our commitments and our overall budget picture. And ultimately, we had no ability to undertake quarterly planning. Literally, it was just one annual hit process. Basically now, what we can achieve is we've got one single version, and that single version is a whole marketing calendar, and it's an 18-month rolling plan. That allows us to be able to print at one button all the activity for one of our business partners. So if we were going into a savings meeting or an investments meetings, we can actually print within seconds our overall plan for that business partner, and that gives us the real empowerment around having a sensible dialogue, bearing in mind we're in constant challenge to make sure that we're spending a lot of our marketing dollars in particular areas of the business, and therefore it helps us to really influence from a marketing perspective something that we've never been able to do in the past. The plan is actually in real time, so once we've got agreement to change, basically that change is affected and it is basically there and visible right across the individual channel teams, which is really important because previous to that, literally, unless you had contact with that individual planning manager in the implementation teams, you had no idea in terms of what activity was in train or what was being planned going forward. And from a financial perspective, everybody who sits in marketing will understand that the marketing budget is under constant challenge. And therefore, in order for us to fight back, but also influence the need to retain all of our marketing budget, basically that financial position is at our fingertips. We know what our commitments are, we know what our actual spend is, and therefore we know what our risks and opportunities are against that budget. In terms of a financial perspective, slightly reiterating, the budget was basically in complete autonomy with the channel managers, and therefore they controlled the spend. And everybody has an appreciation that that budget was quite parochial in terms of making sure that they could have the empowerment to basically mobilise as much of the activity that they want and influence. Whereas, in all honesty, that might have been not the right decision for the business. And the monthly accruals process was massively intensive in terms of really trying to understand how much we'd spent, how much has actually come in and what we've got available to us. So now, marketing budget is held at a central point, and therefore, on a monthly basis, we have a strong governance process where all the channel teams attend a meeting which allows us to determine what our risks and opportunities are. So then when we have new demand coming in, we can determine what the best opportunity to spend those extra dollars. And also from a financial processing perspective, we have automated feeds from our finance system, SAP, which allows us to basically completely automate the reconciliation and the accruals process. So that's taken massive time out of the business and also gives the confidence to the business of the accuracy of the information. Digital assets, this has been a massive win for us, as I said before, because all our collateral was sitting with our third-party agencies, which places a massive risk on an organisation, particularly the size of Barclays, when you think your competitive edge is sitting remote from your organisation and outside your firewalls. So what we've done is we've created this library which has allowed us to basically link all the channels together. And this is particularly important for us because our digital online channel sits remote from the marketing function, and therefore we can influence very strongly in terms of making sure that they're using the consistent assets that we have. And it's bringing great opportunities for us in terms of actually bringing our costs down for each campaign, because we're just reusing those assets because we're rendering to the different individual channels. By leveraging one lead agency, those costs are coming down massively, because prior to that, each implementation team would basically create a replica of that asset in a different style. So there was no consistency, and basically our costs were like 8 times or 10 times, depending on how many implementations or what our channel mix was for a type of activity. In terms of workflow, this is a new concept for Barclays, and the way we implemented it to get buy-in by our different teams was we actually implemented it on a task-based approach. So that was really what the key milestones were in our end-to-end process. But now that that's bedded in, they're realising the value, and they're also realising the value of integrated workflows, that it's making sure that each different area within that process becomes accountable in terms of making sure that they deliver within time and budget, whereas before, the campaign manager was totally accountable for the successful implementation. So that's really influenced in terms of how we're actually engaging with our different colleagues. And we can really understand throughput and resource planning. Organisationally, probably like yourselves, we're under massive resource constraints, and our headcount is constantly challenged in terms of making sure that we're adding maximum value for our organisation. So by understanding how our resources are being utilised and what that actually means from a commercial perspective, we can push back quite heavily. And we have done in the past, maintaining not only our budget, but also in some cases increasing our budget. And it helps us basically fight and influence to get more funding to do more above the line activity, which we've evidenced recently when we've basically secured over £2 million additional marketing budget for mortgage activity. And then the artwork review portal, this is where we can really make a step change in terms from a legal and compliance perspective, because our colleagues have been totally bought into this portal capability, which allows them to review monitor. It also, if they've provided initial feedback and we've actually responded to it, they also have evidence of that audit trail, so they can see what they've said before, and they're just making and signing off on those comments instead of having to rewrite and review everything again. So from their perspective, it's basically making their time more efficient. One thing that I just wanted to highlight was the one customization that we've done. Marketing is constantly changing. We create an annual plan, which is basically placeholders over an 18-month window, and then we move into a quarterly planning process. And within that, lots of changes in the way that we actually take forward our budget. So what we've done is we've built an enhanced data entry capability, and what this allows us to do is to do scenario planning. And that allows us to change the way in which we've originally allocated our activities, not only in terms of the budget assigned or the volumes or the different channels. And therefore, once that scenario planning is complete and signed off, we can actually bulk data entry back into Aprimo. So therefore, it stops the individual resource-intensive process of going and amending the individual items. So that's been a really powerful win, not only for us to make sure that the plans are maintained effectively, but also from a team perspective, they don't have that onerous task of doing those probably 100 updates as part of the quarterly planning process. So in terms of just giving an overview of what we believe we've achieved by implementing Aprimo, we do have an effective planning process. It's made us have the ability to have those sensible dialogues with our product executives who are really bought into what we're trying to achieve. Now we have the ability to influence the campaign activity, but also marketing is driving the channel mix based on return on investment, whereas organisations such as ourselves are very much driven on volume and product. So therefore, product managers want to see regular activity going on. But if we can evidence basically their activity hasn't achieved what we believed it should, then that allows us to be able to determine alternative methods of using that funding. And that's been really powerful, which is basically making sure that we achieve our overall annual goals as a marketing function. We can resource plan. We're therefore maximising the resources that we've got. It's also allowing us the ability to leverage resources from one team to another. And that's given us great opportunities around skills, because colleagues can see that they can move from one team to another, and therefore they're not pigeonholed in below the line activity or above the line. So from a becoming an all-rounded marketeer perspective, they're seeing real value add. We can monitor activities in progress, so we can really identify where slippage is happening and therefore or there's bottlenecks within our process. So it's helping us to implement a continuous process improvement plan. And that's really effective as well, because we're listening to our colleagues. We're not just enforcing a process, we're listening and making changes as required. We have an effective management of assets, and that's really, as I've said before, from a digital assets perspective, we're really bringing our costs down and therefore making sure that all of our marketing dollars are well spent. From a budgetary perspective, we're making sure that we've got the right controls in place, and we're having regular dialogue around those risks and opportunities which we'd never had before. In addition to that, that is allowing us to respond quickly to budget challenges. On a regular basis, we are constantly being challenged to reduce our budget from the central finance team, and literally at a press of a button, we can understand all that information, which is massively powerful to us. And finally, we've really got a strong, effective governance process, which we were party to a Q1 audit this year, and we attained a fantastic satisfactory rating, and a large part of that was down to the Aprimo capability and how we'd implement it into the organisation. I'll just hand off to Kevin for future plans.
Okay, thanks. So just to finish off, a couple of minutes on future activities with TRM, ARM, Aprimo. what we're looking to do, really maximizing functionality of the tools. So TRM, there's great opportunities within version 6 that we're looking to integrate more broadly across our campaigns, improve our processes, things like global objects, really establishing them as core components, just making our processes more robust and more easy for the users. In Aprimo, it's a case of getting more adoption, getting everyone using it. Obviously, the more data that's in there, the more teams that are using it, the greater viewpoint you've got of the activity plans. From a module perspective, there's some really interesting stuff going on with TRM. We're looking at the self-service market module. So we're looking at changing the way in which we deploy our leads to certain channels, more towards a maybe an on-demand solution. Also looking at contact optimizer and the offer optimizer solutions to take advantage of all the predictive analytics work. And then in Aprimo, looking at annotation elements of the solution as well, again, to streamline and improve our processes. Upgrades, we're looking at both versions, looking at upgrades, so interesting stuff, partners around 6.4, so we're in conversations with Teradata on that, and we're also talking to Aprimo around what's going on in that regard. Next as well, we're also talking to other parts of the group. We're a big bank, we've got marketing departments across the globe. We're talking to Western European colleagues about whether they would like to use TRM as well, sharing them the benefits we've seen, similarly with Aprimo. So if we can build that skill set within the bank, we can build up a good knowledge base ourselves, share our learnings internally. And finally, more in the TRM space, looking at new channels coming on board, social, SMS, building upon that, looking at improving our email channels, getting better data into our warehouse, specifically around things like email and our digital activity. So integrating the clickstream data that's available, getting that into our marketing mix so that we can use that to influence future campaign activity. Okay, so just a few conclusions then. So if you've got a Teradata box, we believe there's significant advantages of running the CRM activities from that same environment. You know, the interesting analysis and viewpoints of how many vendors you should use for your CRM, we see a real key benefit in keeping the data in one place and attaching the software to that single point. If you haven't got an MRM tool yet, then we've seen great value with it. MRM and Aprimo has added amazing governance to our processes. We're now completely in control of what we're doing. So if you think you can relate some of the points we've got, if you're not using an MRM tool, I'd consider that a high priority. And then finally, I think it's an exciting time. We chose TRM and Aprimo pre-merger, so we're in an interesting position whereby we're just looking to see how the applications are going to converge over time and that journey that's being taken. Okay, so thanks everyone for listening.
Okay, well join me in thanking Bev and Keith.